Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of This Life's the Pits. Jumping in here for a quick pit stop here on a Monday. Now, usually I will batch a few separate podcast episodes here and also do some breaking barrier episodes with other folks in my world, colleagues, other remarkable humans that are business owners or friends that have been in my world for many years who have just influenced me in different ways, family members. And I've stepped back for a couple weeks. I had batched a few and went on vacation last week and decided to just take a break and pause. And there's something really magical in the pause that if you are a high achiever like me, you might struggle with. And so I wanted to come on and talk about that for a few minutes and then also kind of introduce the next few weeks here of what you're going to find on This Life's the Pits podcast and on the YouTube channel over here. So as many of you know, my world has changed quite a bit over the last quick 3 years. It has been quite an intense last few years, and not unlike many of us, when COVID hit, it really changed and amplified some of the things in our thoughts and how we viewed the world. It was really one of those make it or break it for people. And I found myself speeding up and slowing down all at the same time. And what I mean by that is that my husband and I were both essential workers, right? And I use air quotes if you're listening on the podcast and not watching me. I am using air quotes for a reason because I think we are all essential. Like we all needed to contribute to the world in some kind of way. But um we were both technically what they labeled as essential workers and had two small children and trying to just figure it all out, as was most of the world, right? And so during that time, I felt like we were speeding up so much. I felt like we were just grinding out the days. There were times where I had to bring my kids into the clinic I was working at, and they had to like hang out in my office for an hour or two while I had to go into the office for a couple hours. And it was just a really insane time. Um, and yet I felt like I was home a lot and there was a pause. There was this like energy of what now? And I'm finding myself again here a few years later, after, you know, which I'll back up in a minute, but after launching two separate businesses and finding myself in this space of like, I did it. Now what? And I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one that is a high level achiever that goes through the motions, that burns it all down, gets to the next level, and then is like, shit, now what? And so I think if you're in a space where you're just not sure, this might give you some insight. So for those of you, especially the women out there, and double down if you're a mama, um, this is a space that we find ourselves in cyclically. And so I really wanted to just jump on and kind of explain my process and how I have cycled through this and what the process is for me that has allowed me to move through when I'm feeling stuck or wondering now what. And it has become a practice. It has become my foundation and um, elevated into the principles of my business. And so back in 2020, now prior to that, I had started a small private practice on the side. And that launched around end of 2018, early 2019. And I had, just a few small clients and client base. And as the pandemic hit and people were struggling, my My client base went from a handful of clients to about 20 overnight. I mean, it was very quick. And I found myself, leaning into this, wow, I'm making traction. I'm really serving in a way that I never had before. Right. I had always worked for somebody else. I had always went in and did psychosocial assessments. Have done, different types of assessments as a medical social worker, then as a psychiatric social worker, as an outpatient care management leader. And I've done so many different types of assessments and ways in working for somebody else to determine checking the box on what this client or patient in front of me needed. And all of a sudden I realized I get to make my own assessment. Now, yes, clearly within the parameters, right, of the ethics within social work as a psychotherapist, but I got to really make my own assessment. I got to really decide who I was working with. And as that unraveled and as I grew in my business, I'll never forget my husband. This was an aha moment for me. He looked at me one night and said, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" Because, we were speeding up in that moment. We're in the thrills of end of 2020, early 21. It was still a wild time, but we were doing well despite the chaos of the world. And he said, "How long are we going to do this? How long are you going to work 60, 70 hours a week, multiple jobs? How long are we going to do this?" And it didn't dawn on me because that's what I had always done. That if that's what I had always done, I'm always going to get what I've always got, right? It's that age old, you know, you're you're crazy is the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And so I had to shift, I had to pivot, I had to really sit with that idea of what's next? Like I've arrived at this moment of being my own boss and doing it unconventionally, doing it my way and doing it well. And I think the scary part was, who am I in that when I'm not tied or tethered to somebody else or something else? And so it was a scary time for many reasons, but 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now is when I decided to cut ties in working for a larger organization and go out completely on my own. And I had no idea what was going to unravel from that. Within about a handful of months, I had multiple colleagues reaching out to me for support in numerous different things, support in their own business, support in just their craft as a social worker. Um, I had many folks that I had supervised in numerous different ways in different jobs prior to that, reaching out for either letters of recommendation for a new job or to get into grad school, or just to share with me where they were at in their journey. And even still today, I have them reaching out and letting me know. And so I started helping about three other colleagues get their private practice business up and running. And they were successful. And actually four people. And they were successful. And I sat with that and said, gosh, there's really something here. Um, and as I started to help more social workers primarily, but then also um, women branch out from this stage of burnout to finding their inner self and this badass inner desire to move through where they were at and no longer just sit in the muck, right? Like a handful of years ago, I just sat with it and just said, this is all it's ever going to be. Right. I've gotten to become a supervisor in this organization, and this is just all it's ever going to be. This is I've capped. And until I decided that that's just not true and I get to determine what's kept, um, it took me that level of confidence and that level of such deep desire to stop being burned out. It was on me in an industry that, um, sort of that's a badge of honor. Um, I decided I didn't want that anymore. And that's a really hard place to be. And if you find yourself in that place, if you are a social worker or a therapist or in the human services as a healing, helping professional, or if you're just a woman who desires more for themselves, then it's possible. And what I did during that process was a 3-step process for myself is I started to visualize. I started to allow the dreams and the thoughts and desires that I held, not just in my mind, but in my heart. I started to listen to that. And what came through was so much of me just helping in a different way. It was helping leaders, not just helping people in general. It was helping women that had already done some of this inner work, already evolved themselves into a place of now what? Right. And so I started to really visualize what that could look like. And this is where that the coaching industry came into place. And I started to really look at myself as not just a leader in the social work field, but a leader amongst other leaders and somebody who could then coach other leaders wanting to lead others. And it was a really aha moment for me when some of this started to come through, but also terrifying, right? And so I had to really sit with this visualization and write out and journal out the thoughts that were coming through and these ideas because so much was pouring out of me because I'd kept it for so long. So if this is you, this phase is hard. It's hard to allow the floodgates to open and just dream again and visualize what life could be outside of what you've conditioned yourself to allow it to be. And so I'm just introducing this today, the 3 steps, and then over the next month, I'm going to go in depth in how I did each of these processes, each of these steps within this grander process. And so visualization is the first step. Visualization is the key ingredient to alchemizing the life that you want. It is the first key ingredient. And so you really have to know where you are and where you want to be. And we'll go deeper into this in next week's episode. But one of the primary parts to that is that we can only see the next version of us so clearly. We cannot see necessarily who we're going to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. We might not even be able to see who we are in 3 months. But what we can see so clearly is that who we are right now is not all of who we can be. And so as we get closer to that next version of us, we keep leveling up and leveling up, the next version becomes more clear. And I think that's what has been so scary for me is that every single time that I step into this next version, I feel myself pulling back into that old version because it's new territory. And anything new brings out fear and imposter syndrome. And so leading yourself through that. And that's what we're going to talk about in next week's episode of the podcast is visualization and how to do it. Like actually how to visualize. Like what do I do? How do I do it? I'm going to walk you through that process. And then the week after that, we're going to dive into intention. And so the next phase, the next step in the process is setting intention. So now that you have this grand vision that you can see from here, right? May not be the whole puzzle, but you can see the next piece. And so now what? How do I get from the thoughts and the visualization that I can see so clearly in my head? How do I get that out? And how do I actually put that into goals? How do I set objectives to meet my goals? And so I'm going to walk you through that process and how I do it. It may be different than other people, but I'm going to walk you through goal setting with intention. And then the following week, the third and last process is action. So action backed by massive intention with visualization at its core is magic. I would not be in this position where I am running two businesses simultaneously. One is I'm constantly having a waiting list with folks who are looking for therapy. And I have that. I've mastered that skill of my service and backed by just social work at its core, but how to provide a really beautiful therapeutic service. And from that, because I have poured myself into that intentionally, setting goals at getting better and better at my craft every time with every client, I have naturally had other colleagues reaching out to gain support in their craft, whether it be a social worker, a therapist, a counselor, other folks in the helping professions and care management. Or I have worked with folks that have opened their own business of selling something tangible, but because it's such a core part of who they are and it's coming from their heart and soul, it's a similar service that I'm providing. And so when we can look at visualization and then we can look at how to goal set with intention and then take those and create mile markers for yourself, that each of those mile markers is an action to get you closer to that vision that you first had. So we're going to go through the next few weeks of the podcast. And we're going to start next week with intention or with visualization. And then the following week is going to be really based in goal setting and how to goal set. We're going to talk about SMART goals. We're going to talk about the mile markers. We're going to talk about how to walk those steps back from the visualization. But you need to have the vision before you can go into intention and goal setting. And then once you have both of that, you can then take action because then you have a roadmap for yourself. So we're going to discuss each of those phases and how I do it and break it down for you. And so knowing that this first step is visualization, I want you to sit with yourself for this next week and allow yourself to dream. Allow yourself to pause and say, what's next? Not from a place of masculine energy needing to grind it out and go, 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 do, but from more of a feminine energy of being and creating and confidence. And I am at this space right now with a part of my business is right now we are building and creating a retreat in the next month. And this is something that I have wanted to do for so long. And it's coming to fruition, but I have to pause with each step because I'm so quick to go from visualization to action. And I think so many of us high achievers get a thought in our head and we're ready to take action on it because we're so good in crisis and we're so good at the masculine energy of going and doing. And we struggle to pause and to just be. And so last week I went on a little mini vacation with my family and we did a lot. We went and we explored and we had a blast. However, what I found myself doing so much better this time around than previous experiences is I just allowed myself to be in the moment. There were times in this little few days that we were away that I thought to myself, oh, I should be doing some notes or I should be checking on my emails. And I said, no, Erin, that's an old version of you. Just be, just be in the moment. Rest your eyes, relax, take a walk with the kids, go explore. And that's what I did. And it was hard, y'all. It was sort of excruciating because I came home to more work, I felt like, but from a place of peace about it. Did I have a crap ton of notes to get caught up on? Yeah. Did I have a lot of emails to get connected with? Yeah. Did I have anxiety around it? Yeah. But did I care about that? No. No. Because I know myself and I know that this next version of me is going to get it done because that's who I am. And so I had to pause. And I think this is the most important part of this whole process is the intention setting. And I'm learning how to do that. I'm walking it right along with you guys. And it's really cool. It's really cool. You know, this retreat that I'm creating and that I'll be running, it's all based in intention. And so much of me wants to just take action and do things because I have such a beautiful, big, bold vision. But remember, I said action backed by intention is the secret sauce. And so, without me sitting and being intentional around everything I'm doing and understanding why I'm doing it and what the energy I'm doing it from is coming from, that's important. And so we're going to speak to that in a couple weeks. Next week, we're going to dive into how to really visualize. Like, what does that even mean? And the following week, we'll go into massive intention and goal setting, and then we'll put that into action. And that will lead us right into the week of the retreat. So, this is going to be such a beautiful, beautiful process for those of you that are following along in the alchemy experience and what I'm doing in there. This is going to be parallel. So, I hope to see you guys on the next episode. And if you have questions about how to visualize, check out the next episode next week. But in the meantime, I want you guys to sit in the space of allowing yourself to just be and allow the thoughts that you have that are bubbling to the surface, stop stifling them, stop pushing them down, allow them to come forward, jot things down in a notebook, jot things down in the notes app in your phone, things that come to mind that you want to do, the places that you want to go, experiences that you want to have, people you want to connect with, jot it down. Keep a log. Start to dream again. Start to step into those desires and say, if there were no barriers, if there were no boundaries to the things that I want to do, what would I do? And so sit with that over the next week. And then we're going to launch into how to visualize and how to do that daily as a practice. So, 3-step process. That's what got me through everything I do, y'all. This is where I'm at right now, really currently live in my businesses. I am setting intention. And so if this is you where you're feeling stuck and you're feeling kind of like, what's next? Like I have been through the ringer, right? If you're telling yourself, good God, I've been through so much. Why do I feel like I'm stuck again? Why do I feel like I'm in this constant cycle? This is going to be a really good episode for you. 3-part series. So check it out. And if you want more, if you are desiring to come into the alchemy experience, follow me over on social media. I'm the Erin Pitt. And you can check out the alchemy experience. You can join if you feel called, and or just pop over there for some really great, inspiring content from those that I work with every day, and from those that are in my world that I am posting and giving out. And until next time, guys, I love you. Go set the world on fire. We'll see you next week where we talk about visualization.